Show Me the Money. I don't know whether you saw that particular movie. It still's kind of embedded in my mind. The title may be more than the movie itself. Although it was a comedy about a sports figure and about his agent and about how he was, and many other sports figures, professional athletes are getting ripped off, and how that could be redone. And of course the agent screams out, "Show me the money." But I think in many cases, when we think about couple problems with finances, sometimes we think that's the answer. If we only had a little more money, we wouldn't have any problems. Unfortunately, I've known people that make millions of dollars a year, $10,000 a year, and everything in between, and I've noticed that there's the same level of problems over money, no matter how much money people make. And you think, well, if I'd have been a professional athlete, if I'd have had money like that, I've counseled a number of professional athletes, some ex-athletes. Right now I'm counseling a ex-NFL football player, and they got problems just like you and I. And the one I remember the most that stands out in my mind is a football player that played almost 20 years in the pros. Pros almost never have that long a career, so you'd think, well, of all people, he would have made enough money to be set. And I remember sitting in his home, sitting on the couch, him deeply depressed. We were sitting in a spacious, beautiful home, paid for, owned it. 2 Mercedes, brand new models, sitting in the garage. Just one small problem. No job. He hadn't graduated from college, but he'd gone on to play the pros. He played for several different teams. He made a lot of money. He'd spent a lot of money. And now he had a house, paid for, had a car that were paid for, but he had no cash flow. And he'd married his wife, who had been a stewardess when he married her. She quit, and now they had 2 children. And now she'd had to go back to being a stewardess. And if you know anything about being a stewardess, it's not the world's best pay. And so it was very difficult. Matter of fact, she didn't make enough to pay the property taxes and to pay for gas and all the other things you have to do to live a life. And unfortunately, her husband, who I was sitting talking to, who was deeply depressed, was depressed because, exactly what job skills have you qualified yourself for running around on football fields for all those years? And unless you have money to buy into a business, and he just never planned that far ahead. And so, unfortunately, he and she are having a serious problem. So it doesn't matter how much money you make. It's how you deal with that as a couple that makes a difference. Money operates metaphorically in our lives. It represents different things to different people. To some, it represents security. To others, it represents opportunity. To others, it's about dependence or independence. So it represents different things to different people, and that's why there's sometimes conflict with couples, because it means different things to each one. The most extensive research that's been done with couples recently was done with 50,000 couples, and they found 47% of them said that they had money troubles frequently. Now, when you add in those that said they had money troubles, but not frequently, now you go to 93%. So we're not dealing with a topic that is unknown to couples. And so, to get it started, I'd like to tell you what I call my birthday story. Couple had been married for a number of years. It was coming up on her birthday. He had forgotten about it the last year. Not a good thing. And so he was thinking, I've got to get her a good present. And so he was thinking about what should he get. And so he happened to be in the mall, and he went by a jewelry store. And he began to look inside, and he saw something beautiful he'd like to buy his lovely wife. And then he, of course, thought, well, we don't have the cash for this, and our credit cards are maxed out. But the nice lady behind the counter told him, we can fill out for you to apply for a credit card for our company, our jewelry company, and you can buy this with credit today, and you don't have to pay any interest for 3 months. And so, with elation, thinking that finally I could get something for my wife to show her how much I appreciate her, and so he bought that beautiful item. He wrapped that up. He was so excited a few days later when it was her birthday, and he couldn't wait to give her the present, and he was just waiting for her to unwrap it, and she did, and you could tell she was on. It was a beautiful piece of jewelry. And he was just waiting for her to wrap her arms around his neck and kiss him and tell him how much she loved him. And she looked up at him and she said, "How much did this cost?" "Well, don't worry about that. Where did you get the money for this? Our credit cards are maxed out." "Oh, well, I was able to get credit at this jewelry company and I was able to buy it there." "You got another credit card?" Well, needless to say, it didn't turn out to be a happy birthday. And it didn't turn out to be a happy birthday because almost in every relationship, you have a spender and a saver. That's true, I found out universally over the years when it comes to money issues. Now, spenders can be excessive spenders, love spending money on others and themselves, and tend to be spontaneous and perhaps disoriented in our organized personalities from time to time. Savers have almost an obsession with saving money. They feel anxious if they don't have lots of money saved up and are fearful they'll not have enough money in the future to secure their future, and tend to be highly organized individuals. But most of us are not any one of those extremes. We are all somewhere in between. And even though both people may be in a healthy range, right in the middle, one of the parties usually is more of a spender, and the other is more of a saver. And whenever there's a difference, and there's always a difference, problems ensue. And that's where so many of the difficulties develop. Now, the solution to the problem is negotiating annual budgets. Sounds like a corporation. And frank discussion over longer-range financial goals. Sounds simple, but it's much more difficult than that. But you'd think couples would discuss long-range or longer-range financial goals, but oftentimes people don't. People just have in their own head what they think is next. For some people, they're thinking about taking a great vacation. For another person, they're thinking about buying a new car. For another person, they're thinking about saving for their kids' college. And then another person is thinking about saving for a down payment on a house, or the resources to buy something more significant, or perhaps even retirement. Well, those are all very different things. And so you need to sit down and have a frank discussion about goals. And secondly is a negotiated, and that means you have to talk with each other, annual budget. The reason I say that is this. Most couples don't have a budget. Well, they think they have a budget. They know, well, my rent costs this much, my utilities cost this much, my car payment costs this much, gas is about this much each month, you know, I have this much spending money I kind of spend each week. And, you know, I add all those things up and we make more money than that, so I'm good. Well, the problem with that kind of thinking about the budget is that there are so many items that don't occur weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Like once a year, Christmas comes around. And most of us will buy gifts for other people, for children, for me, grandchildren. And so if you don't figure that in the budget, where does the magic money come? Are you like the magician that reaches in the hat and pulls out the bunny? Or more like you reach in the hat, and Ron wanted me to show you the money. You ready? I'm going to show you America. I'm going to show you the money. This is what America, this is actually a debit card. But most of them are not debit cards. Most of them are credit cards, and that's what we end up doing, is spending our money while using that kind of resource. And that's not the best way to buy. And the reason why we end up getting in credit card debt is because we're going to take a vacation, but we didn't sit down and plan how much money we were going to spend for that. And we charge it. We weren't planning to go to the shower that we go to and buy a gift. We weren't planning for the wedding and the gift that we're going to give. We didn't plan for birthdays, but yet we were going to have birthdays and we were going to spend money on that. And on you go, the kind of things you spend every year. And unless you put those all into an annual budget and you line item all those and add all those up, you can't possibly manage your resources. And that's why budgets oftentimes don't work for people. Number two, we live in a consumer culture where more is better. As long as we're constantly bombarded with this message that more is better, that's going to create problems for us. The result of this philosophy is that couples work to the point of exhaustion, are deeply in debt, and have little or no savings or investment. Because if more is better, you really can't get around to doing anything else than that. And that creates a great deal of stress for couples. And the reality is this. Here's what's interesting. Since the 1970s, and the reason why I choose the 1970s is because we only have a consistent, same Gallup poll that's asked couples, how satisfied they are with their lives since the 70s. And so when we look at the cost of living, and we look at people's buying power, and we look at the standard of living of people, our standard of living has increased significantly since the 1970s. However, people's level of contentment is half what it was in the 70s. So, if money was going to fix the problem, we'd all be so happy we couldn't contain ourselves. But money isn't really the answer to that. Another interesting thing is research by Miriam Arland and Samuel Parker has identified 4 common orientations towards money. So we each have our own orientation. I've included as part of this on the back where you can, after this is over, take your thing here and find out what your particular orientation is. But one of those is people view money as status. Money is viewed as power that enables one to keep up with their peers. I guess that's keeping up with the Joneses, although I was never sure which Joneses we were supposed to be keeping up with. But for some people, that's what money is. Money is a way to keep up with one's peers, or to, as one compares oneself in a materialistic way with others. Or money as security. This person, of course, focuses on saving money, and this gives them a sense of security. Thirdly, some people view money as enjoyment. They love to spend money on others and themselves. You know, these things are not inherently bad. Philanthropists love spending money on other people, and that's not a bad thing. But sometimes the enjoyment of money can get you in great debt. And finally, some view money as control. They see money as a means to control their environment and achieve their goals. And oftentimes people that have control issues are the type that in a couple relationship they want to keep their own checking account and their spouse can have their checking account. And they feel very uncomfortable about mixing the funds because of a control issue. So people just have different attitudes and orientations towards money that usually comes from our childhood. And our childhoods are different from one another, and that results in potential conflict. Now, recent research through ARP indicates that the factors considered most important for a successful life are a good marriage, a good relationship with one's own children, helping others in need, having an interesting job, and being well educated. About 79 to 94% of people said, yeah, these are important. On the other hand, only 27% considered earning a lot of money necessary for success. But I would suggest to you that even though we value these things, We don't necessarily organize our lives in such a way as to reflect what we say that we value. And so, consequently, it's estimated that 80% of our waking hours are spent earning money, spending money, or thinking about money. That's a lot of time. And so, even though we say that's not all that important, it becomes often an all-consuming issue. And nothing's worse than getting home and as a couple having conflict over money issues. The solution, I think, to the problem is to prioritize things. The things we value, we should, in a disciplined way, through time management and work orientation, not let it dominate everything, simplify our lives. We have to take charge of our lives and make sure the things we say we value our family, and we never spend any time with them, then unfortunately that value is diminished. And so we have to organize our lives to reflect that. As I think about examples of this, I was talking to my daughter this week. Like all parents, I think my kids are great kids. But I was talking to her this week, and she was telling me how she turned down a promotion. She's a district manager for a major retail, actually jewelry company, which makes it interesting with my first story. She's told me a lot of other interesting stories about people in jewelry. But she's a district manager of about 15 stores, and is doing very well. A number one district manager for the company last year. And so they offered her a regional managership for Florida and Puerto Rico. Well, to her mom and I, we thought, that sounds nice. Florida and Puerto Rico. Who'd not want to go to Florida and Puerto Rico? And our daughter said, well, I turned them down. And I said, well, why? They're not going to offer you, a good compensation for it? No, they were going to pay fine. Well, why didn't you take the job? Well, she said, well, I just knew, because I know my regional and how much they have to travel, that I wouldn't get to be at home and around my family as much as I want to. And number two, she said, I've committed to teach Sunday school every Sunday at the church where we are. And she said, I'm not going to be all over everywhere and not going to be there to teach Sunday school. I thought, wow, she's prioritizing things. And so she said, eventually maybe they'll come to me with a job that'll be a better job, but one that I can spend more time with my family and do the things I want and yet help the company. Good attitude, good priorities. Again, consciously choose to reduce your spending on non-essential things. I think about our daughter. Our daughter was the saver in the family, and our son was kind of the spender among our kids. And it was funny as we reflect on that. Growing up, being a minister and a counselor, we never suffered from having so much money we didn't know what to do with. And so, especially when we were young, two young kids, it would come the end of the month, and it'd be a Sunday night, and some of the families in church would want to go out and together as the families and eat the pizza at a place. And we'd look around, and we had $4 or $5 to our name. And back then we didn't use credit cards at all. And so we'd have to always turn to our banker, literally our piggy banker. We'd talk to our daughter and negotiate a loan. She's probably at this age, 5, 6 years of age. She'd say, well, how much are you going to need for this? Well, I think it's $5 is all we're going to need for this. Of course, things were cheaper back then. And she said, well, when do you think you're going to be able to pay me back? I'd say, well, we can, pay, get the cash and check on Monday. I'd say, Monday afternoon, we can get this back to you. So she'd go in, open her piggy bank, count the money out. And for some reason, our daughter always had money. And so it's not surprising that she waited, and she's 37 years old, waited till she was 37 before she bought her house, because she had lots of money in savings, easily could put the down payment, waited till a house was just what she wanted, and it wasn't going to in any way adversely affect the family for them to buy a house. And so, again, the saver worked for her. But again, I'm proud of her for saving wisely, using her money, prioritizing things in her life. But also, we need to eliminate non-essential elements from couple schedules and put reasonable boundaries on every area of life and work. That's the key. Commit as a couple to become better educated about finances. What's fascinating to me is America is a very much money-oriented society, and yet I would suggest that financial literacy is very low. Most people don't understand much about how money works. And there are two types of people in life. There are people that work for money, and there are people that put money to work. And the people that put money to work and know how to do that do well, and money is never a problem. People that work for money, money is always a problem. And so I would suggest, getting better educated. And to answer that call, I think one of the better people out there, very practical, common sense, even entertaining, is Dave Ramsey. And we're going to be sponsoring his Financial Peace University here in a couple of weeks. And we encourage you to take advantage of that. And read his books, listen to him on the air. Again, we need to increase our financial literacy, not as an individual, but as a couple. Both people need to be going over the same material. Both need to be talking about this so that a couple can get on the same page. Once a couple is on the same page, then good things can happen. Practical steps, here they are. Really, they're simple. They're just 4 things. Document your present spending. If you don't know where your money's going, how can you ever know whether you'll achieve any kind of financial goal? Where did the money go? Show me the money. First thing you've got to do is actually track where the money's going. And, just go back and follow the money trail. Do a history on where the money's going. First of all, you've got to discover that. Then number 2, cooperate to create a budget that you monitor regularly. So don't just create a budget and then ignore it. Create one that mutually reflects both people's values, and then monitor it. Then make a realistic plan to get out of debt and save more money. And finally, learn how to invest your money wisely. Very simple, 4-point plan, but each of those steps requires some real education. Dave Ramsey provides a lot of very practical insight, and I hope you'll take advantage of that. To overcome our financial problems and make our handling of finances a strength in our relationship, we must become better communicators and conflict resolvers. So that's a topic of some of our earlier couple clinics, or one on communication between men and women, and the other was on conflict resolution. And so these practical life skills we all need to grow in our ability to do, so that whether it's finances or other subjects, we can resolve things and we can move ahead productively and positively as a couple together. So I would encourage you to take advantage of all the opportunities you have to do so. And I will thank you for being here this evening.